Boxing Truth here. I want to do a little story about Gary Russell Jr., WBC featherweight champion, and wanted to talk about a little bit about his career. First, let's talk about some news that was reported. It was reported by Dan Raphael a couple days ago that he's probably gonna fight on the Thurman Porter undercard. The rumored opponent is supposed to be Patrick Hyland of Ireland. I'm not sure how true that is because it's very late. It's very late for that fight to be announced, and also it still hasn't been officially announced. So I'm not really sure if it's gonna go down on March 12th. Might go on another date. It might get sorted out, be pushed back. But that's the opponent they're looking at right now for Gary Russell, and it's disappointing. Gary Russell, despite being a world champion now, is still fighting the same level of opponents he's been fighting before he became a champion. I mean, you're a world champion now. I mean, you shouldn't be on training wheels, shouldn't be learning on the job as a champion. It's time to fight some world-class fighters, some top 5 opponents, at least in your rankings. But, of course, Heyman and his team, who control Gary Russell's career, they haven't shown a lot of confidence in Gary Russell at all, and it's disappointing because Russell has a good amateur background. He made the 2008 Olympic team. You know, he was a very good amateur. But as a pro, it's been a laughable career. I mean, you follow this career in the beginning. I mean, the guys they matched him with, which is not the type of opponents that a guy with the talent and amateur pedigree that Russell brings to the table. But for some reason, Al Heyman and Gary Russell's team, they haven't shown much belief in him. And going by the the hand-picked opponents and no-hopers he's fought, I mean, his first 25 fights, laughable. Bunch of fights were announced very late to the media. A bunch of TBAs, Tom Bob Andersons, as Steve Kim refers to it. That's one of the biggest jokes about Gary Russell in his career. The guy fights nothing but TBAs. So it means like he's gonna fight a late replacement opponent, or an opponent that's gonna get the call on late notice. He's probably gonna get the call a week notice, 2 weeks notice, 3 weeks notice. He's been fighting a bunch of opponents coming off, not getting the notification or a lot of time to train for a fight. I mean, a bunch of TBAs. It makes you wonder, are Heyman and his team doing it on purpose? I mean, for the first 25 fights of his career, was he fighting? Well, a lot of his fights were scheduled maybe 2 weeks out, and then he would fight. So while Russell was training, his opponent would get the call about a week out, maybe 2 weeks out the most. It's laughable. It's a joke. Anyways, Russell got a lot of exposure from Heyman early on in his career. He was able to get showcases on HBO, and this is when Heyman had HBO on lock. I mean, his influence, it was amazing. He was able to get Russell on the airwaves on HBO in an 8-round fight. HBO actually agreed to air Gary Russell against a no-hoper in an 8-round fight. Practically unheard of on HBO. And it was a telecast when Max Kellerman outed Heyman. And ever since that, Heyman's relationship with HBO became more toxic as time went by, to the point now where hardly ever a Heyman fighter appears on HBO. That 8-round fight was against Leonilo Miranda, fighter from Mexico. Fought a bunch of nobodies, tomato cans in Mexico, knocked out a bunch of guys with 0 wins and a bunch of losses. That's why his knockout ratio was what it was: 36 wins with 33 knockouts. Knocked out a bunch of nobodies in Mexico. I mean, probably got some guys in the street, made up some fake records. That type of opponents. And Russell, he just hasn't improved his level of opposition. I mean, around the same level of guys. And another example of Heyman's bad matchmaking, he practically gave Russell no chance of winning his fight against Lomachenko. The only reason that fight happened was because Loma and Russell were the top 2 ranked contenders for the WBO featherweight title. So they did a purse bid. Heyman won. The fight was on Showtime on Heyman's network. The only reason why he pulled the trigger on that fight because he had control of the promotion. He couldn't manipulate Lomachenko, so Lomachenko was going to come to win. He couldn't do that, but at least Heyman could, get it on his network in America. His commentating team. Maybe they could, dick ride Russell as much as they can and fool fans to thinking they won, but Lomachenko just didn't provide that opportunity for them. I mean, he went in there and beat the shit out of Gary Russell. It wasn't even close. It was a mismatch, and Lomachenko had two fights coming into the fight. Yeah, I mean, you can count his World Boxing Pro fights, but still, he was still under 10 fights, and getting a second crack at a world title for the WBO featherweight title that he now holds. And Lomachenko beat him up so bad. He beat Russell up so bad that not even the home cooking judge could give it to Russell. He scored it. Lisa Jampa scored it a draw. And it was an atrocious decision. Even the other scorecards, 160, it wasn't an 8-4 fight. To me, it was like a 10-2 fight. And the only reason why I gave Russell 2 rounds was because Lomachenko didn't do anything in those rounds. And it's not like Russell did much. He was throwing punches, but there was nothing on him. A lot of amateur punches being thrown, slaps, nothing on the punches, just no power behind them. And Lomachenko was just ripping them with body shots. What Russell did show that impressed me was his toughness. I mean, he took a beating for Lomachenko, and he didn't get knocked out. I mean, Loma's not the biggest puncher, but he was landing some vicious shots, was touching up his body, and was landing a lot of big shots in that fight. And Russell, he took his ass whooping like a man. He admitted he lost. He said the decision was fair, so he took his loss like a man. But it was just, he could have had a better road, a better development process heading into that fight. But Heyman's matchmaking, a bunch of nobodies, guys, no hopers, guys that didn't belong in the ring with him, guys that he couldn't learn from. So he got like a false sense of confidence from all these fights. And Lomachenko, when he turned pro, he said straight away, I want a champion in my first fight. And Bob Arum told him, I can't do that for you because you're not ranked. You need to beat a ranked opponent for an organization, and once you do that, you will be ranked, and I can get you a title shot. And that's exactly what Lomachenko does. That's why, I'm a fan of Lomachenko. I mean, he wasn't scared to test out his ability from the get-go. As soon as he became a real pro, not a World Boxing Pro, a real pro. It was pretty much his 8th fight without headgear on, so he was still, very new to the pro game. But it was officially his second pro fight, challenging for a world title. I mean, that's still a big accomplishment, and he almost won the fight. He almost knocked out a seasoned veteran in Orlando Salido, and it's a complete contrast compared to Gary Russell. A laughable career, hand-picked opponents, a bunch of guys that took the fight on late notice, a bunch of guys when every time you would see a media report about Gary Russell's next fight, it would say Gary Russell versus TBA, and everybody would have a crack at it. I mean, it's hilarious. Twitter's it can be very funny sometimes, especially boxing Twitter. Boxing Twitter is fucking hilarious. I get a good chuckle every day from something for someone who tweets something out about boxing. Anyways, Gary Russell, he was able to redeem himself after the Lomachenko loss. Got a couple of get-back fights. He was able to make a statement against Johnny Gonzalez. On paper, is a good win. I give him credit. He got Gonzalez out of there. He knocked him out. He was able to get a strap. But Gonzalez is a hot and cold fighter. Very past it. Getting up there in age. He could lose on any given night. He's been knocked out multiple times. And the reason why Heyman, it was good matchmaking in this fight because for a couple of reasons. Gonzalez is a slower fighter, straight up and down fighter. No angles. He's not as fast as Russell. And another thing is, for some strange reason, Gonzalez just doesn't know how to fight southpaws. The guy has lost to a bunch of southpaws in his career. Ponce de Leon, Gary Peninsula, how you say his name? Gary Peninsula, the Philippine fighter. He also lost to Nishioka, the Asian fighter that fought Donier on HBO. So he doesn't do well against southpaws. Lost to them multiple times. Been knocked out by Jerry Penalosa. He's been knocked out multiple times by southpaws, and at a later stage of his career, he's going to fight a fresh southpaw who's fast and can counter. But in that fight, Russell committed to his punches. He was throwing a lot more vigor behind him. He was a lot more aggressive. I liked what I saw in that fight against Gonzalez. Maybe it was good matchmaking, whatever. But, he did his job. He got him out of there. He wasn't punching like an amateur like he was against Lomachenko. So, some progress at least. But ever since then, he's lost momentum again. He hasn't fought since that fight against Johnny Gonzalez. Heyman tried to match him with Oscar Escadon in October. Heyman cherry-picked from the top 15 of WBC rankings. He picked a guy who's a lot shorter, pretty much the same level as Russell. Been fighting the same type of guys. And that fight ended up being canceled because Russell had a wrist injury or a hand injury of some sort. He's been out ever since. And now he's been rumored to fight Patrick Hyland, who there's really not much tape on the guy. Nothing really recent, but from what I see, very average fighter. Below average speed, straight lines, no angles, not really much athleticism, basic fighter. Should be easy pickings for Gary Russell. Just a lot of safe fights. I just translate into that Heyman and his team just don't believe in Gary Russell, and it's disappointing. I mean, he's a world champion now. It's time to see if he's the real deal, if he has potential of being a major star or a very good prize fighter. Still a lot of questions and answers about Gary Russell Jr.'s career. And now he's going to be rumored to fight Patrick Hyland, but it looks like Heyman's going to have to pull some strings for this fight to be sanctioned by WBC, because right now Patrick Hyland is not ranked in the top 15 of WBC, so Heyman's going to have to buy a ranking for Hyland in order for that fight to be sanctioned. Escadon is off the table now because he's scheduled to fight Robin Castellanos from Mexico, who's the number one contender. That's the guy Russell should be fighting for his first defense. He should be fighting the number one contender. I know Robinson's promoted by Golden Boy and the lawsuits and all that stuff, but he's a mandatory contender, so WBC, all they have to do is order a purse bid. Whoever wins the bid promotes the fight. Now Castellanos, I mean, yeah, he's got 11 losses. He's been knocked out multiple times, but he's a better fighter than Patrick Hyland right now. He's the number one contender. He's been fighting better fighters. He's very seasoned. He's very experienced. He's been tested at least. I mean, and a lot of his losses were very early in his career in Mexico, and he's been a way better fighter ever since the past 5 or 6 years. He's won a lot of fights. He couldn't beat Reina Alvarado. He lost that fight, but he bounced back and got an upset against Ronnie Rios, knocked him out in 5. It was a good fight. It was a good performance from him. Surprising. He beat up a faded and unfortunate fighter in Rocky Juarez, who's had a lot of bad luck in his career. But he's on a winning streak. He's on a roll. He has momentum going into the fight. This is the guy he should be fighting. But instead, Russell is being rumored to fight a guy that doesn't deserve a shot at the title. Has done nothing in his career. Fought a bunch of nobodies. A bunch of safe fights. The one step up he took was against Fortuna, and he lost a decision unanimously. Fortuna's a very flawed fighter, beatable guy, but he is an action fighter. He could produce some good performances. He could also produce some bad performances. He's a hot and cold fighter as well. He could look spectacular one night, then look downright average the next. So beatable fighter, but that was his step up and he lost. So just the same old story for Gary Russell Jr. A lot of criticism and it's warranted. He's turned pro. He's been a pro for 7 years now. A lot of questions need to be answered. I mean, how many more TBAs is he going to be fighting? How many more opponents that are going to be coming in, taking fights on late notice? It just shows that Heyman's team and just don't believe in Gary Russell, and so they'll match him very carefully. Perhaps against Abner Mares in the future, which is a winnable fight for Russell. He'll probably won't get a shot at Santa Cruz. I don't think so. Not for the time. Not for the time being. Maybe later down the road. I see Russell fighting Mares first instead of Santa Cruz in the near future. But yeah, that's Gary Russell's career. It's still not official that he'll fight Patrick Hyland, but I see him fighting the same level of opponents that he's been fighting the majority of his career. Anyways, y'all let me know what y'all think about Gary Russell. Do you have any belief that he could be a true top fighter, a world champion with some true recognition? Y'all let me know what y'all think. This is Boxing Truth. I'm out.